I'm going to show how to use a program called Pixlr online to achieve the same results as we've gotten in Photoshop. While it's not as powerful as Photoshop, it doesn't have some of the features like the warp feature that we're currently learning. For the merge project, it's actually not too bad. So here's where my files are. They're in my Documents folder. I've got them in my Multimedia Design Period 3 folder, in a folder called Merge, in a folder called Final. And then here are my three files. Got a picture of a funny looking cat, George Clooney, and my background. Notice how large the background is, 1024 by 1530. For our purposes, that's more than big enough. So I'm going to go to Google Chrome, and I've already launched Pixlr. If you just go to pixlr.com, and then scroll down to the Pixlr editor and click Launch Web App. I'll point out the similarities as I go. For right now, I'm going to click on Create New Image and type in the parameters 1024 by 768 and click OK. When it first starts up, it has all of these palettes over here on the right hand side and the pretty familiar toolbar. I'm going to close the Navigator palette. I'm also going to close the History palette. And for now, just leave the background in the Layers palette open. I'm going to click on the File menu and say Open Image. Then I'm going to navigate back to where my folder is by clicking on Documents, MMD Period 3, Merge, Final, and these are images that I've downloaded. So I'm going to click on the top image, hold the Shift key down and click on the bottom image, and open all three at the same time. I'm going to select everything in this first image by holding the Command key down and tapping the letter A. Then I'm going to copy it by hitting Command C. Click on my untitled image and paste it by hitting Command V. Now I can close this image and click No because I don't want to save this image. Then I'm going to click on the cat image, do the same thing. Command A for Select All, Command C for Copy. Click on my background image that now has two layers. Command V for Paste. Then I'm going to click back on the cat image, close this. I don't want to save it. Then I'm going to click on George Clooney and do the same thing. Command A for Select All, Command C for Copy. Click on the background image. Command V for Paste. Now I can close this window. So I have three layers in addition to the background layer. I'm going to double click layer 1 and call it Grunge because that's the style of background. Layer 2 is the cat and layer 3 is George. Then the next thing I'm going to do is save this by clicking File, Save. It's going to save it to my computer. I'm going to call it merge underscore final underscore first initial last name. And then for the format, I'm going to select PXD for a layered Pixlr file. When I click OK, it's going to go and save it on my computer. So again, I'm going to click Documents, multimedia design period 3, merge period 3, and this is my final. So I'm going to save it here. Now I have 3 images that I need to size and start working with. For the layer for George, I'm going to click on Image. I'm going to click on Edit, Free Transform. Notice how it has Control T here? That's a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to hold the Shift key down as I put the cursor over the corner of this so that I can scale it without warping the picture. What I mean by that is, if you scale it without holding down the Shift key, it's going to squash his face like that. So again, I'm going to do Control T, hold the Shift key down, and scale it down to where his face fits most of the frame. Then I'm going to click Return to set it in place. For right now, I'm going to turn off this layer and this layer, and I'm just going to work with George Clooney for now. Now here's where Photoshop differs from Pixlr. In Photoshop, when I add a layer mask, nothing seems to happen. In Pixlr, it's different. I have George selected. I'm going to click the layer mask down here at the bottom, and just like Photoshop and several other applications, when I roll over a tool, it's going to tell me what the tool is. So if you roll over your cursor, you can actually see what the tools are called. This is the Marquee Tool. So again, I'm going to add a layer mask, and when I do it, George's face is going to disappear. I can see my layer mask here. If I had clicked here and I hit erase, it would erase from George's face, but I don't want to do that. So I want to make sure that when I'm doing anything that I've got the layer mask selected. Now here again is where it differs from Photoshop. I'm going to click on the brush tool. I'm going to go up here to the brush size and choose a really large brush. I can make it even larger by sliding this slider over, and you can see how large the brush is. When I brush over the blank page, you can see this green brush show up for all of the areas that I'm brushing. I'm just basically going to brush over half of the image. So again, here's where that differs from Photoshop. Now I'm going to click the eraser tool and do the same thing with the brush, make it really large, 200 pixels or so, 350 pixels. Now I'm just barely going to hit the edge here because the larger the brush, just like in Photoshop, the softer this edge is here. Now I also want to erase this over here because I want to be able to see the background behind George. I'll click on the background so you can see what I'm talking about. So I want to be able to erase all this over here. Be careful when you're clicking on things because you can easily erase stuff that you don't necessarily want to erase. So notice how I've hit part of his face because of how large this brush is. Here's where I go back and forth between the paintbrush and the eraser to add and subtract things. I'm going to pick a smaller brush, 100 pixels. Then I'm going to come back over his face, or over his hair, excuse me, so that I can bring back those features, the edge of his face. I'm just painting right over the top of it. It's kind of nice because it shows me where I'm painting with that green brush. Not liking the way this looks right here, so I'm actually going to switch back to the eraser tool. Notice how it remembers the brush size. Click 100 pixels. and it changed the shape of the brush. Notice how now the brush is square. It's also jagged, and I don't like that. So I'm going to hit Command Z, go back to the brush. I accidentally clicked here instead of here. So I want to use that soft brush to just feather in that area. And I'm pretty satisfied with the way that looks. So now I'm going to turn the cat layer on. And you can still see some of that white area around here. I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. I'm going to turn George's layer off. And remembering that I left this part of his face there. So on the cat, I'm going to add a layer mask. I'm going to use the paintbrush. Get a really large brush, 200 pixels or 300 pixels. And now I'm going to erase the left side of the cat. So now when I turn George back on, you can see how the faces are starting to align. I'm going to just soften it up just ever so slightly here. So you can see now the features of the cat and the features of George. I still want to delete this area here. So I'm going to go back to the eraser tool, make a larger brush, and delete this area around the cat. You can fine-tune this later, but for the time being, this is pretty much what I want. I'm going to go ahead and erase some more of George's head here so that I can utilize the picture on the cat. Notice how when I'm switching back and forth that I'm always careful to select the layer mask and not the layer itself. Then I'm just going to go back and forth and add features. So I'm going to put the ears on the outside here with a smaller brush. So that it looks like George has ears, cat ears. And I'm just careful to click back and forth to get the features that I want. Now I'm going to turn the grunge background back on so that you can see what it looks like in the context. The only thing left on this is to go back through and clean up all of these white areas